As you know, last Tuesday, I came on the stream, and for the first time since we've started this thing, for the first time for me in a couple of years,
Yeah.
it's like, I've got ES up. That's what I'm going to trade. I'm not trading NQ. I'm trading ES. I like a couple things about the way it's trading relative to some things I'm seeing in NQ. So it's kind of become now my go-to scalp market. And that's so funny to see you, because you and I weren't trained in this exact same avenues from the same people. It's not like we're both like learned from the same mentor.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we both started finding more success in ES than NQ. I just find that fascinating.
Yep.
But
Yep.
guys, Stowe, so we were at the Chicago NinjaTrader meetup event. Stowe, we were at a dinner, and he looked me in the eye and said, "Mark my word, I am passing this thing. I'm going to be on that desk." And I said, "Let's get after it, buddy. You know, like big fist pump. Let's do it."
Yep.
And here we are. Yesterday was the day. He passed it. And just for those of you who don't know, like the Apteros tryout is not something you can like come into and really YOLO. Like you can't trade a huge number of contracts relative to the risk available to you. It's more like, hey, you have to treat this like it's like realistic, like any reasonable trader would treat risk. And so you have to actually show that you can do it. You can't just really get lucky and like pass it in a day or two. So, and I posted his stats. Go check out the post, and he retweeted it, stowed it on his page as well. So go check that out on X if you want to see his stats. I don't know if you know much about that stats dashboard or that like performance ratio, but
Yeah. No. Talk about that a little bit, because I was curious about how that worked.
yeah. So performance ratio is really just, it's very, very similar, and we don't have to like get super nerdy on the exact details, but it's very, very similar to expectancy. Okay.
Okay.
Except instead of taking it into like, what do you take expectancy into? Usually dollars. You could take it into ticks in terms of units that you arrive at. This is just pure, a little bit more raw. What's the combination of your win percent and your average winner to average loser, aka your actualized risk reward, right?
Okay.
And it puts that into a plot, and it shows that over time. And anything over 2 is strong. And your results were like touching 2 at the bottom of your cyclical kind of good
Oh, good.
trade, bad stream of trades.
Well, that's good.
Very strong performance. Very,
cool.
very strong. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, honestly, it was like, so I've been thinking about this a lot, been talking about this a lot with my friends. Also, I should mention too, when me, AJ, and Leo were all doing the Painting the Tape podcast, AJ just quit NQ. He was just like, you know what? I'm just an ES guy now. And we all ragged him for, I don't know. I'm still doing it. And so now that I have also discovered that ES is secretly really good to me and really nice to scalp, now I'm in a bunch of trouble, because now I'm on AJ's team and I have to live down the years of mockery I gave him. Yeah. But no, I was talking to Deli about this, but I've also talked to AJ and Leo about it. You know, AJ does Lucid, and he's trying to start that up and do some desk work there too. And as we get into the idea of like what it's like to be a modern trader, not necessarily, 20 years ago where you had different opportunities to become a trader that don't really exist now. Now that path is different, and the reality of sim prop companies and being a gateway to being able to trade your own money. I mean, because that's what I did. All the money I've made has basically all come from just sim prop world. And so the transition between like, this is a game to, okay, now I'm just trading, is so difficult and weird for so many reasons. And I think a lot of those things kind of came up in the eval too. And because when I was doing the Apteros test, like I'm on the show, obviously we're buds. I said I was taking the tryout, so there's added social pressure there.
Yep.
All kinds of crazy things like that come up. But the thing I've noticed with traders the most is when they get through the evaluation process, or they get to the point where they're on a live desk. The problem is that once you're trading your own money, there's no like end, like there's no goal, you know?
And that's a problem. Interesting.
Yes. And because mentally, the way that I've always managed these tryouts or managed, you have to make X amount of money to get a payout, things like that exist in prop world or bucket shop world, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. There's no goal in trading when you're just trading your own money. You're responsible,
but you have to reframe it. There are.
Exactly.
So I don't know if this is because I came through like physical desk, real prop, like S&B, like walking around with the guys, like real deal kind of stuff. And the goal becomes more, it's kind of crazy. And I'm sure you could talk to different people who came from S&B who would have different opinions. But I think many would agree that the goal becomes to be an excellent risk manager, to become an excellent aggressor when appropriate to be aggressive, right? That's a big deal. A lot of people struggle with not being able to hit something hard when it's really there, when you really see it.
Right.
And so that was kind of like ingrained in me. So I've always thought that, look, targets are a necessary evil of an eval. That's how I see them, not as a positive thing. I see them as a necessary evil because we have to give people an actual roadmap, something tangible to say, if you can do this, then you get this reward. When you're in this weird state where you no longer have that, as you're describing, my recommendation is to focus on those type of other things where it's like, I'm a great risk manager. That's my goal. I am really, really great at putting on risk when I'm supposed to put on risk. And I'm really great at not putting on risk when I'm not supposed to put on. It's almost like you control your downside and then you're aggressive where you should be. And the upside takes care of itself rather than like constantly striving for upside goals.
I mean, there was a whole year where I was just playing poker for money. And that's how I paid my bills. I would go sit at the casino and hit cash games all day and then go home. I don't recommend anybody ever do that. It's not a very fun way to live.
It's a grind of a life. Yeah.
It sucks.
I used to, not IRL, but multi-table, like back in the party poker days, that stuff. Till like 3 a.m. like, man, what a grind.
Yes. You have to sit through variance, and variance has no timetable, and it will just grind you into the ground. Also, a casino is not a very healthy place to spend your time.
Cigarettes,
but anyway, I would play 1-3 typically, and then I moved up to 2-5. And every time I tried to make the jump to 2-5, I would get hit with weird roadblocks because the bet sizing didn't make sense to me anymore. The quantity of money didn't make sense to me anymore. My pain threshold for losing money is something that like has evolved over time. And I mean, you can say losing. I know Pax hates when I say losing money, but my threshold for expenses, increases over time. And I don't know, it's just something that I think gradually took me years to develop, like playing poker, where I was able to get up there and instead of leading with a $15 or $25 bet, you have to lead with a $55 or $75 bet. And just calculating that math and calculating those losses and making them hurt less emotionally.
What you can do in poker and what guys actually do and what you can do, this is an exact parallel. Almost everything that has come out of Stowe's mouth the past 5 minutes is an exact parallel to trading. Poker players end up focusing on things in units of big blinds. Traders, if you're doing it in a way that I think is appropriate, where you're taking consistent risk per trade, you're focusing on what's called an R value. Your like targeted dollar risk per trade. And if you have a winning trade, you might have a winning trade that's 2.7 R. Losing trade, they should all either be -1 R or less, right? If you end up with a scale and a scratch or something. So thinking in terms of units that are not dollars is a unlocker, an emotional, psychological unlocker to scale and to play in those bigger arenas where you can go back to kind of your thinking model of bets, big bets in poker or units of R in trading.
Yep. That's why I don't have money on my screen. The only person I know that can do it is XY, and not have it mess with his brain. He uses it as a skill. He uses it as an asset. He's like, I need to have money on my screen. That's how I keep, myself in line. That's how I, scale my stop loss up. And he doesn't approach it from a place of fear, which is what I've always seen, myself and other traders they see the dollar signs start to show up and they get freaked out. He's just cool, stone cold killer with it. And he's just like, yep, I just need to see that math. So I know where I'm at and I know when I can leave the desk and go do something else.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a lot of truth to that. Like if you're only focusing on units of R and you might, let's say you might even make a mistake with a calculation, or you're only focused on seeing kind of like points per contract, not even like total points multiplied by your contract. You can lose sight of things from a risk management perspective. If I'm losing on the session, one thing that I will do is I will go glance at the dollar amount, because I just need to know. I usually have a pretty good guesstimate as to where I'm at, but I need to know what that number is, just because it's just very easy to track. Okay, DLL type of situation, you just step away.
Yep.
Man, some great conversations here, guys. This is like really practical takeaway advice from a couple guys who have seen a thing or two
from the streets. The best part about spending every day in a casino, though, is if you're having a bad day, chances are high that there's somebody around you that is having a worse day than you're having if you're sitting in a casino. So that was my other thing. I also really love just watching people and meeting strangers and seeing what they're up to. And there's hardly a better place to do that than in a casino in real life.
That is funny.
Hey, Splug, what's up, brother? Splug told me today that we have finally convinced him to look at leg-to-leg delta profiles, so that's cool.
Nice.
Splug says, I think having money forces you to think of your trade in terms of what I need dollar-wise to hit a price target. When you think of points, it makes you think of risk to reward. Yeah, exactly. It's much too easy to chase if you stare at money. And then the other thing that will happen too, if you've got money up on your screen and you're losing, this is a habit that I had years ago that all habits tend to flare back up. So this is one of my ticks that I'm always working through. If I'm losing, like if I'm down $1,000, all of a sudden I begin to structure the way I'm seeing the day as, okay, if I can get this many points out of the day somehow, then I can get my $1,000 back.
That's
so
right.
Instead of looking,
which is a form of revenge trading, even if you're not like super tilted. It's you're going away from market generated information to my little world. What matters? Like, what was my average price? What is my P&L for the session? Like, those things are not a part of your process for making a trade decision unless you're crossing risk thresholds.
Yep.
Period. So that's absolutely, man.